Hi, I'm Andy Ellis. I'm the host of this show and a potential Green Party candidate for governor of Maryland in 2026. I'm using this show to highlight interesting people and ideas that help me and you to understand what is happening and what is possible. You can learn more about the campaign by going to gogreen2026.com. Guests on this show do not necessarily support my campaign or the Green Party. They've agreed to come on to discuss ideas and issues. And of course, click the subscribe button on YouTube so you can keep up to date with this podcast.
The Maryland General Assembly can be brutal, to say the least. As a Green Party governor, how would you work with the General Assembly in Annapolis?
Yeah. So first off, let me say
They
this.
could just freeze you out,
They might, first off, let me say this. I'm not a rich or famous person. So if I win as a third party candidate, it will be because I have assembled a statewide coalition of folks with, as we like to say, the courage to imagine and the power to transform. So we'd be talking about a different political reality if I were to win. Like, it would be one thing if I was Jesse Ventura or something, and I could ride to the governor's office on my wrestling career and my movie career, but I'm not. So if I'm to win, it's going to be because the political transformation has already occurred, and a lot of Marylanders across party lines have already said that they believe in the priorities that we believe in. So if that happens, I think we're going to have a different set of political negotiations than we would have otherwise, because freezing me out freezes out all those Marylanders who voted for me. So that's the first part of it, is that if I win, we're going to be in a different world than we live in now. The second part is, look, I know we're going to have to negotiate. I'm not running for dictator. I'm not running for CEO. I'm running for governor. And that means we have to govern. That means we have to negotiate. We have to compromise. We have to work with the General Assembly. We have to work with the counties. And so we're going to do that. But also, one of the powers that the governor has in that setting is the power to veto things. And we're going to use that veto as we need to in order to make sure that the priorities that Marylanders put us into office for are being heard. The third thing I'll say about that is each year we're going to have a focused agenda of constitutional amendments that we ask the General Assembly to pass. And if the General Assembly is willing to pass those constitutional amendments in order to broaden the power of the vote, in order to protect the power of the vote, in order to expand the economic opportunity and things like that, if the General Assembly is willing to pass those constitutional amendments and put them in front of voters, then we're going to have a much better working relationship. If the General Assembly is not willing to pass those constitutional amendments, we're going to see a lot of veto fights. And I think that's kind of the way that the system is set up here in Maryland, and we're going to use it for that. The fourth thing I would say about this is I'm not afraid to use the emergency powers that exist for the governor in Maryland. And so we're going to use those powers as we can to address ongoing crises that the General Assembly refused to address. And the way that I see this happening is in the time that we're inaugurated, before the General Assembly starts, we're going to lay out a set of emergency priorities. And the General Assembly is going to have an opportunity to work on those priorities and work on solving them. Things like food deserts in West Baltimore, or things like environmental contamination in Curtis Bay, or things like a lack of water in parts of Allegheny County. We're gonna declare an emergency. We're gonna ask the General Assembly to come up with a set of plans and solutions for it. And if they refuse to, then we're going to use our executive and emergency power in order to put the force of the state behind addressing those things. I don't want to do this in order to get in there and butt heads with the General Assembly all the time, but that's what democracy looks like in a multi-party system. It looks like compromise, it looks like consensus, and it looks like using the powers that the executive has in order to make sure things get done. So yeah, look, I don't think this is going to be easy. If we win, it's going to be, the hardest 4 years I've ever had in my life. And Bill Ferguson and Adrian Jones are going to make sure that it's hard and that I don't get to just push my agenda through. But I also think that a spirit of compromise, a spirit of consensus, and a spirit of addressing the priorities that Marylanders would have identified at that point pushes us forward and gives us an opportunity to do things that we've never been able to do before.